it's one of your speeches again, which is about companies doing their own business and not being interfered with. So I'll play that one out now.
I would simply counsel you, madam, to let companies do their business, and the less you regulate, the less you tax, the less you interfere, the quicker our economy will recover. That's what it's all about, and that's something you simply don't understand.
So a couple of questions on those, because it relates quite nicely to what you were just saying there about, how much the government should actually interfere, how much they should tax, where is the line? And I'm really interested to get your view on this, because obviously, you've been in politics, so you've had, experience in that world. But, when we talk here today, it sounds like you are, much more towards not just the libertarian, but I would say almost in the anarchist camp. I'm interested to know your view on whether you think that any taxation is legitimate or whether you think that all taxation is fundamentally illegitimate.
It's it's a difficult question. I was asked this by some of the Mises undergraduates in Auburn some years ago, and it isn't easy. But I would suggest that, let me suggest a system that I think would work. Let's say that we could have a card, like an American Express, about that kind of size, a sort of a gold card thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can opt out. So I would say, I don't want anything from the state, but I'm opted out of everything from the state. But of course, I'll be opted out of tax. So when you go in and get your car filled up with petrol, more than half of which is tax, of course, you show the card, and it doesn't cost £100 to fill the tank of your car. It costs £50 because there's no tax to pay because you're not having anything back. So when you go and have your pint of bitter or your bottle of wine, 50% of which is taxed again, your pint of bitter isn't £5, it's £2.50. So when you go and buy your car, a £30,000 family car, of which £6,000 is VAT, there's no VAT. So your car is only 24,000, not 30,000. So on and so forth. So you have this wonderful card that you show. That actually gives you enough money, enough of your own money back to have your own private insurance, health insurance, to go about. You don't need the state because you've got far more money in your own pocket. See, they talk about a minimum wage or a living wage now. It's gone up to £11 or £11.50 in this country. Well, of course, and the government say, aren't we wonderful? This is wonderful. We've ensured that the employer pays you the living wage of £11.50. Well, because it isn't so simple as that. It doesn't work like that. What actually happens is in the hospitality industry, if you've got a pub and you opened your restaurant every night of the week, you can't afford to pay your chef and your waitresses, all that kind of thing. So you only open at weekend. So you start sacking people. Or if it's manufacturing, you move your manufacturing to India or to China because you can't afford £11 now for unskilled labour or semi-skilled labour. And if you have to pay your waitress that, what you then have to have your differential, your chef wants more money. And so it goes on. So you have all that kind of interference, which crucifies everybody. If you took that out of the system, we could all live very comfortably. And you say, oh, what about social care? What about social welfare, Mr. Bloom? So, well, look, you're going to have so much more money left, right? You're going to have so much more money left in your pocket. You can then contribute to whichever charity of your choice is going to help people who are in need of care. And of course, if you go back to 1943, 1944, Beveridge, for example, the start of the welfare state, as we know it today, the concept was you paid your stamp every week, and that entitled you to free at the point of delivery your health care and a modest pension when you retired. And if you fell on hard times through no fault of your own, the state would look after you. But of course, any serious historian will tell you, will know, that if you go back before the welfare state, that's what your mutual societies did. That's what your friendly societies did. You paid your stamp into them, but of course the difference with them, they wouldn't attempt swing the lead. You couldn't be, that couldn't be welfare or social care, could not be a lifestyle choice. And you'd paid in your stamp, and somebody would make absolutely sure that you weren't swinging it. So You don't need the state. People think they need the state. You don't need the state, but people think you do, because who is going to explain to people how much better off would be if they paid no tax on anything at all? Now, let's say, who would argue, say, oh, yeah, what about the police? Well, let's be frank, the police are useless. The police are utterly useless now. So I don't want to pay the police. In my little village, with all the money that we had left over, it's zero crime territory anyway, because it's a tiny little issue. But we would have a private security system like they have, for example, in Beverly Hills or in Cape Town. You pay for your protection, and the police, you pay them, the police do what you want them to do, which is protect you and your property. Now, who do they protect? They're too busy on their computers finding out who tweeted something nasty. And then they come around and say, you tweeted something nasty and it's a hate crime and blah, blah, blah. So the police aren't doing that. Well, they're useless. So we would have a much more efficient police force if we paid them, because they'd dance to our tune. He who pays the piper calls the tune. That's not happening at the moment. Our police force is rubbish. And everything the state does is rubbish. The national health system, for example, it's a budget of something like £170 billion a year. If you divide that into the people in the wealth-creating sector paying tax, it works out at something in the region of £16,000 each per year. So we're not getting much. It employs 1.2 million people, the National Health. It's the biggest employer after the Chinese Army or the Indian Railways. One or the other. Well, how can it be that only 50% of those employees have any form of medical qualification? How can that be? But it's true. So what do they all do? I know you need some cleaners and bits and pieces and all the rest of it. But do you need 600,000? Well, of course you don't. And only this morning I was talking to a lady. She was waiting for an MRI scan. She'd been waiting for several weeks. And I said, if we took the money that we'd given to the Ukraine for armaments, we could, I think it's somewhere in the region, we could have had 260 more MRI scanners in the country. And do you know what she said? She said, oh, well, I know, but it's helping people, isn't it? It's helping the Ukraine. This is the depth of propaganda. She was quite happy to have a long waiting list for her own MRI scan in pain with her back, because she felt sending money to the Ukraine for armaments to one of the most corrupt governments on the planet, she thought that was such as her propagandized view of the world. But then we don't have a free press. Why aren't the free press? Shouldn't the press be screaming? What does 600,000 people do? Diversity officers, net zero officers, and all the rest of it. Where are the doctors and where are the nurses? That's what we want. Where are the MRI scanners? That's what we want. But that's not what we're getting. Free at the point of delivery. Well, as an Austrian school economist, you could free at the point of delivery. I mean, you couldn't invent a more ridiculous way of running a system, could you? Imagine a pub. Imagine a pub with beer free at the pump. So you go into the pub, it's run by the state, and it's paid out from taxation. The bogs would be a disgrace, the beer would be a disgrace, the bar staff would be a disgrace, wouldn't they? The whole thing would be a shit show. But when it's owned by, like my local is, it's owned by a landlady who rules the roost, and she's a bloody good landlady. The beer's bloody good, and there's a choice of them. The service is crisp. Everything is good. And in the winter, there's a nice big log fire. It's because she runs it, not some arsehole in Whitehall.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So, surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.